Tonight, family members say he was deathly afraid of heights. So what led a 32-year-old Baltimore businessman to the rooftop of a Mount Vernon landmark? That's where the questions begin in the year-old mystery in the case of Rey Rivera. Did he jump? Was he pushed? Tonight, I-Team lead investigative reporter Jane Miller uncovers the bizarre evidence in this case that makes it among the most unusual the city's ever seen.
Baltimore's stately old Belvedere hotel building has seen a lot of things in its 100-year history. Perhaps none quite so strange as the mystery of 32-year-old Rey Rivera. An aspiring filmmaker, husband, and former editor of a financial newsletter, he was last seen leaving his Northwood home early on the evening of May 16, 2006. His decomposed body was found a week later in a closed meeting room of the Belvedere. A hole in the meeting room roof and Rivera's injuries indicated he'd probably come off the top of the Belvedere, 14 stories up, and crashed through the lower roof. But how, when, and why?
Do you have any witnesses to any part of being on the roof, going down, going through?
No.
Any witnesses?
No, we don't.
Medical examiners determined Rivera died from multiple and severe injuries consistent with a fall from a height. But they made no ruling as to homicide, suicide, or an accident, instead declaring the case undetermined because the circumstances surrounding the incident are unclear. But the real hallmark of the case is the unusual and the unexplained. Rivera's cell phone, for example, survived the apparent fall. It was found on top of the lower roof, as were Rivera's flip-flops. The phone was intact and in working order.
Does that make sense?
It's possible. I just find it to be highly unlikely with that type of kinetic energy that's hitting that rooftop.
Mel Blizzard is a former Baltimore County police commander who specialized in behavioral assessment. He reviewed some of the evidence in the case at our request.
I definitely feel that there are a lot of unanswered questions. There are a lot of loops that need to be closed.
A big loop is a cryptic note found by family members after Rivera had disappeared. It was typed in minuscule print, folded up in plastic, and taped to Rivera's home computer screen. Attached to it was a blank check.
It seemed really bizarre.
So bizarre that police sent it to the FBI, which examined it and concluded it wasn't a suicide note. Former police commander Blizzard reviewed it and agreed.
What it does appear to be is a weird stream of conscious writing. The other thing that I thought about, or could be, is if he's writing some type of code to someone about something. That's possible.
The note is addressed to brothers and sisters. It refers to a well-played game. It names people who died, including actor Christopher Reeve and filmmaker Stanley Kubrick. It contains a long list of people Rivera knew and was related to, with a request to make them and himself 5 years younger. The note also introduces an element of the case that involves Rivera's apparent interest in the Freemasons. The note begins and ends with phrases used in the Masonic Order. Rivera's family and friends say his fascination with the Freemasons centered on their reputation as an organization with secrets. In fact, we've learned on the very day he disappeared, he'd talked with a member of the Maryland Lodge to inquire about joining. On the weekend before his disappearance, he spent time reading The Builders, a study of masonry. And one of his last acts on the day he disappeared was to go to a bookstore to buy the book Freemasons for Dummies.
It could be totally unrelated. It sounds to me a person that is inquisitive, wants to know more about an organization. Why? I don't know.
Based on what we've seen, is that his interest in the Masonic Order was not necessarily to do charitable work. Somehow it was linked to his interest in the movie industry and this theory that somehow there was some control being exerted by the Masonic Order.
The Maryland Lodge member who spoke with Rivera told us there was nothing unusual about the conversation. He described it as typical of someone who wanted to learn about membership. Rivera's last full-time job was to edit a financial newsletter published by a division of Agora Publishing, based in Mount Vernon. It was called The Rebound Report. Family and friends say Rivera had expressed some unhappiness about his work because some of the stocks he wrote about weren't rebounding. In the fall of 2005, Rivera left Agora full-time and began producing videos for the company under contract. A longtime friend, Porter Stansberry, brought Rivera to Agora. Stansberry runs one of Agora's newsletter divisions. Stansberry is mentioned several times in that bizarre note. We called to speak with him.
We heard from Agora's lawyer, who told us the company has asked its employees not to speak with us about this subject.
The police investigation into Rivera's death leans to a theory of suicide.
Have you been able to find any history of mental health issues?
No, ma'am.
Anything that would indicate kind of a leading up of despondency, depression, being distraught?
No, but the circumstances, the evidence, the hard evidence that we have really point to this probably being a suicide.
The last known person to see Rivera alive was a house guest in the Rivera home. She tells us he left the house in a hurry, as if he was late for an appointment. At the Belvedere, there's an extensive security camera system, but a technical problem prevented police from recovering the data from the cameras on the days in question. So whatever the cameras saw, how and when Rivera entered the building, was he alone or with someone else? Those, too, are questions without answers. For the 11 News I-Team, I'm Jane Miller.
In addition to the note that was found, Rivera's family says an unfinished document was left open on his computer. It was a writing about greed.